Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So Silicon Alley company Queen of Raw recently launched their flagship product, Materia MX, an enterprise solution to quickly and easily sell unused fabrics online. A graduate of Techstars, Stephanie is tackling a huge social and environmental impact problem. So let's give a huge Greensboro collab welcome to Stephanie Benedetto. Thank you so much for joining us from New York City.
Thank you for having me.
That is awesome. You made a big journey to get down here. We really appreciate it. I want to kind of start with your background, with your childhood. Let's go kind of back in time. And where are you from?
Yeah, so my story actually starts before I was even born. My family has been in the fashion and textiles business for over 100 years. Since 1896, my great-grandfather came over on a ship from Austria. He landed at Ellis Island and he settled into the Lower East Side in New York. And he had come to America for the American dream. And so what did he do? He had to figure out how to make a living. So he found materials and supplies nearby, things people had brought over on the ships with them, but they weren't using. And he would repurpose them using his hands and minimal waste and minimal toxins because his bottom dollar depended on it. And he sold to local customers these incredible, beautiful finished garments. A bunch of his fur coats I still wear 110 years later. And of course, it was incredibly successful business, but it also made sense for people and for planet, right? I mean, he didn't talk about it as sustainability or circular economy, but at the end of the day, that's very much what it was. And fast forward, I was born and raised in Greenwich, Connecticut, so my family had eventually left New York and settled into the suburbs. And so I grew up around this through the generations. My grandfather was in the business. My family is no longer in the business, but my father-in-law is in the business. So I couldn't get away from it. I didn't do the family route. I went to Wall Street as a corporate attorney, but I specialized in fashion, technology, and sustainability, and wanted to build a business to kind of connect the dots and go and change the world. So that's what I did. After my years on Wall Street and the market crashed, kind of the situation changed there, and I knew it was like the right time to go out and to start my venture.
It's kind of crazy because I cannot tell that you're a New Yorker. You blend right in.
Oh, obviously, and all black, and I don't have an accent. I know I don't.
There's no accent. I would never guess. So what did your parents do?
So my family is a family of entrepreneurs. My father was a commercial real estate broker, and my mother did a lot of non-for-profit work and also manages some real estate as well locally. So kind of grew up around entrepreneurism and to feel empowered. They actually sent me, I went to an all-women's school for 13 years before college, and I think having that experience really led me to probably why I called my company Queen of Raw, to feel very empowered, to have found my voice, and to know that I can go out there, I can build a business, and I can absolutely go change the world. So I think they really inspired that in me.
What was that like? It's kind of like a preparatory academy for women?
Yeah, it was. It's a private all-women's school, Greenwich Academy, and it had an incredible network and community of people, and actually very diverse, despite what some people might think about that kind of a school. They really promoted diversity, both in the faculty that they had there and in the student body. And you know, the classes and the education was obviously really powerful, but I think it was from an early age. They had us do public speaking classes. In fourth grade, I had to get up there and give a public speech in front of an entire auditorium. And every single year through 12th grade, you had to do that. And outside of just pure academics and book learning, that kind of a practice, like, you can't get that. That value of practicing public speaking, I think, has carried me, you know, for years. And in entrepreneurism, it's so important.
You know, we have one of the oldest all-women's colleges in the country in Winston, Salem College, where my mom is a professor and has been teaching for like 20 years. So I totally get it. And like the network and the kind of sisterhood that's built around that is really powerful. Have you found any connections that have been long-lasting from like before college that, you've turned to for personal or business reasons?
Without a doubt. I mean, it was my class was a class of, at the time, 52 girls who graduated, and it was almost the same 52 girls for all those years. So I was very close to my entire class. I actually just went back to Greenwich Academy to speak on women in tech to a lot of the parents and trustees, and a lot of my classmates ended up coming. Those who were still in the New York and Connecticut kind of area came to support me and to catch up. And, thanks to Facebook and social media, we actually have stayed pretty connected, and we've got a group and we do support each other. Some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them work at large companies that I was trying to work with and got introduced because of them. So this kind of network and collaboration, it's so important.
That's
and
awesome.
Really helpful.
And then where'd you go after that? Where'd you go to undergrad?
I went to UPenn for undergrad and Emory for law school.
And were you planning to go into law school as you entered undergrad?
I always wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to kind of go give people and the unempowered a voice. So I originally thought I would go to school and I do kind of represent women and minorities and children and do legal aid work. And then kind of before the market crash, things were booming and deals were exciting, and I kind of got lured into corporate law, and it was exciting because I felt like I was building companies and people were getting jobs, and at these big corporate law firms you can do a lot of pro bono work, and that was very important to me, and I've stayed close to a number of my pro bono clients there. But then the market crashed and companies were breaking up and people were losing jobs, and you see kind of the height of greed and excess, and it got really frustrating, and that was the point when I knew I just kind of had to take a plunge and go out.
How long did you practice law?
I practiced law I was 2 years on Wall Street and then 4 years at a smaller boutique that did specialize in fashion, technology, and kind of some sustainability work. So, I definitely don't regret, obviously, being a lawyer and going to law school. You do learn a lot, whether it's business school, law school, any kind of trade or practice. You do get a good experience and background in how business works. I mean, it helps not having to do my own legal work, anymore now that we have a law firm, but obviously being able to read, these documents and understand what a seed round is, what a contract is, having that background was definitely helpful. So I learned a lot doing it.
Yeah. So what does it mean to work in fashion or sustainability as a lawyer?
Yeah, so we represented a lot of major fashion brands and companies. Obviously, they are a business just like any other business, so they have to run day to day. They need to incorporate companies that they're growing new subsidiaries, they're buying companies, they're selling companies, they have, boards that have to meet and report on financials. They have, if they're public filings to do. If they're private, there's a lot of private work. So kind of day to day, the ins and the outs of understanding how a large business works, in many ways is really helpful for a startup, because if any of you are working right now at a large corporation but thinking about going out and doing your own thing, or if you have, the experiences you get there too, right, is that's obviously ultimately potentially where you want your business to go. You want to grow, you want to become a bigger company, you want to hopefully have more organizations, and you're buying companies and you're growing, hiring employees, and understanding how to navigate the day-to-day work, make hirings, put out fires, which inevitably happen in a business, raise a round of financing. These are all things big companies go through, and you can get good training there. And a lot of these big companies, I find, especially today, they really care about entrepreneurism, and they support their employees within the big companies to do entrepreneurial things. And a lot of some of the greatest ideas that I've seen come out of some of these big companies were started by their own, entrepreneurs,
right,
and people working within the organization, and them nurturing and incubating that is amazing.
Yeah. So did you have the idea for Queen of Raw while you were practicing law?
So while I was practicing law, I was seeing, as the market crashed, kind of all this waste and excess and greed, and in businesses that were breaking up or going private or selling off, there's a lot of liability on the books.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these liabilities include materials, from raw materials to finished goods, whether it's consumer goods in fashion or whatever business. The world is kind of run by a supply chain, and these supply chains create waste at every touch point.
Right.
So I saw the numbers on the books and the financials of how this was impacting the business financially. And then when I dove in deeper to see the environmental impact that this had, just pure waste, not even figuring out how to recycle it or repurpose it or reuse it, but just in perfectly good stuff, that was being burned or sent to landfill. It just made no sense to me, and I knew there had to be a better solution.
So did you start Queen of Raw right after leaving your practice, or was there anything else that happened in between?
No, I had a prior startup. So before
Okay.
Queen of Raw, I had a company called Paper Number 9, which talk about kind of the benefits of academic community. I co-founded with a friend from college. And the lawyer and me, we negotiated a 60-page partnership agreement because we were best friends, and I said, I don't want any issues. This is going to be how we govern this day to day, and let's build this business. She had actually invented a new leather alternative, but she was a creative. She didn't have any business or legal background, and she didn't know how to bring it to market. And it was 8 years ago when kind of innovation in textiles, sustainability was just starting to get talked about. And it hit a note in the market. It's a leather alternative unlike any I'd seen. And we started selling to some of the biggest brands in the world, and we got bigger and bigger orders in. And it got to a place where, we were a bootstrapped company, hand making everything in Brooklyn with a team of artisans. And you get a big order, from a Chrysler, you want to be able to fill it. And so we were getting to the point where we had to either raise a round of financing, build some factories, and take it to mass production, or we had to figure out what to do with the company. And so we had a difference of opinion. We were 50-50 in the business, note to self, and a lot of learnings through that. We are still friends, but at that point, I still own 50% of the IP, but we decided not to take it forward. But talk about kind of opportunity out of challenges. While I was building that business is where I saw this big problem of waste, right? Like, I would go around to factories and mills and brands as we were presenting our material, and just saw them sitting on millions of tons, hundreds of billions of dollars, perfectly good stuff. I mean, we're not even talking about like scraps and destroyed. We're talking about massive volume of fabric on rolls and perfectly mint condition clothing and sealed and packaged. That was just sitting in warehouses. And they were going to burn it or send it to landfill. And that's where I started getting this idea of how do I build a solution. It just seemed like there was a supply-demand mismatch.
Yeah.
And we just had to bring it to light.
Okay, I want to learn about that, but I'm also really interested in paper number 9.
Yes.
And so this co-founder equity split, that's a huge question
Yep.
for a lot of first-time founders
Yes.
and second-time founders.
You bet.
And so what did you get? Like you figured that you couldn't have any kind of other exit strategy. You just wound it down, and you both went your separate ways, but you own IP. Or how'd you close it out with And then what were some of your learnings? Like what would you do differently today?
I mean, the lawyer and me, of course, you think you want to get everything in writing, right? And you can account for every worst case scenario, and there's not going to be issues because it's in the document, and that's what you look to, and yada, 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 signed, sealed, and delivered. And we want it to be 50-50 and equal, and when things are going great, it's never a problem, right? But when you get to these major decisions that have to be made, it's not the day-to-day little things and issues and difference of opinions. That happens all the time in business. But for major material decisions, you get to a point. And I think if I had done things differently or in retrospect, I would have been less worried about every single kind of day-to-day operation and the immediate business plan, and more get an idea of what is your long-term vision for this? Where do you want to take it? What is the 5-10 year vision and exit strategy? And if we had had that conversation early on, and I realized that she liked keeping it more small and artisanal and high quality, and that was enough for her. Whereas me, I want to take it to the moon, and I'll go, let's go conquer the world. And if I had known that early on, I might have thought through
Gotcha.
the decision differently a little bit. And I think that's important, right? When you're looking at finding a co-founder, and I don't know, does everybody have co-founders if you have a startup, or people are doing it on their own? It's definitely possible to do on your own. I know a lot of people who do, and in some ways, sometimes that can be easier because you can make the decision yourself. But in other ways, sometimes it's nice to have, obviously, a community and people to bounce ideas off of. And there are great resources online now to find co-founders if people are looking. There's Founder Dating and other online platforms, Women 2.0 for women, where you can find a co-founder,
Oh, wow.
which is awesome. But before you do, that's where I say, it's called founder dating, that resource, because it is dating. You need to take that person out, get to know them really well, try a few projects together to make sure you work together, and then, to what I learned, know where their long-term vision and strategy is, and that they are able to take the risk at this point in their life, because if they're not, then it always takes, longer than you think, then it's probably not a good time or match.
Okay, so Queen of Raw,
Yes.
you get this idea, you see all this waste.
Crazy.
What was your first step? Did you just go out and like file for a C Corp and go on founder dating and find somebody? Like, how'd that work out?
Yeah, so I had this idea in my head, and the original idea, which is still the root of what we do, but I'll explain, we've added some stuff, was a marketplace. This is, to me, was a supply-demand mismatch. There are buyers out there in the world looking to get their hands on their stuff. They just don't know where it is or what it is. And on the flip side, there are these sellers who don't need to be burning it or sending it to landfill. They just need a market to sell it. So I was going to create a marketplace. But obviously, although I had some technology background as a lawyer in IP, I didn't know how to code at the time, not a single line. Now I can code, but back then I had no idea. So I went to General Assembly, which is based in New York, although there might be other locations in the US. It's a great community of technology individuals looking to find kind of co-founders and have a certain level of expertise. And they have a wall that just tells you people who are looking for jobs. And I read a bunch of people's bios, and my co-founder's bio, something about it, I still have a picture of it I took on that day. It hit a note in me. So I called him up, we met for a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and I started telling him this crazy idea. He started drawing on a napkin of kind of the high-level business and architecture, what the marketplace needed to be. But we didn't jump in right away together, to your point. We started getting to know each other. We worked on a few projects and aspects of the marketplace to test the product, to test things, to get it going. And but then the rest is history. We've been together ever since. And he is a co-founder as well as our CTO and manages now our tech team as well as integral to the business.
Okay, so you mentioned that you have added some extra stuff to the
Yes.
original marketplace idea. What is that?
Yeah, so if anyone is building a marketplace, obviously they are incredibly powerful, but they can be incredibly challenging to get the flywheel going, right? You need buyers, you need sellers, and you need them to match at the right time, the right place, what they want. And especially for us, a global marketplace around textiles for creatives who have a particular thing they want. We knew we had some challenges to overcome. So we put up the marketplace and we went through Techstars and then started onboarding inventory, getting sellers on who had waste of small, medium, and large sellers to test different products. And it was taking us a long time to get the supply on. We had buyers coming and searching in our search bar every day for stuff, and I couldn't get the supply on quick enough because at the time we had to go meet the suppliers, we had to photograph things, we had to get product descriptions, we had to manually upload it into the platform. For some of our enterprise customers, it was taking us months, and that's just no way to scale a business. So we had a challenge, right? We were supply constrained, and we started talking to our enterprise customers, and we realized that part of the reason is they didn't know what they had or where in the world it sat. So we realized we had to build a solution to figure out what they had, where it sat, automate this onboarding process, and then help them intelligently prevent waste in the future. And so that's the solution we built in the fall and we just launched.
So how did that work? Like, so you're doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't scale.
Yep.
But you're getting customers.
Yes.
Were you getting revenue at the time?
We were getting customers, we were getting revenue, but obviously as a business, my goal is to match every request with a sale, right? Every potential buyer, if the problem is that I don't have the product they want, I need to go find that product and make that sale if I'm gonna scale, right? Mm-hmm. So it was, you get frustrated, you're like, I see all these searches, I gotta go find this inventory, and how do I get it on quick enough? It's a problem for scaling. So we knew that the interest was there. We knew the supply existed because I'd seen it all over the world in these factories and mills in huge volumes, so I knew it was out there. And I knew on the flip side now that there were buyers dying to get their hands on it. Mm-hmm. So the challenge was there's buyers, there's sellers, but how do I automate the process and the parts that are taking me too long to scale?
Yeah, so you were able to kind of test out both sides of it,
yep.
Show that it was going to work,
yep.
But you needed a tech solution. Was your co-founder able to build that on his own, or did he have to kind of build out a team? Or
No, I mean, another thing too with technology, you can get so wrapped up in like the perfection and the UI, UX and the nuance of what tech you do, and I'm going to build my own and not use what's out there. That's a hard way to do it, especially for us as a bootstrapped business, and we got all the way bootstrapped. I gave him a budget. I said, look, this is what we have to make this kind of proof of concept. What can we do with it? And he was amazing at thinking through leveraging what is out there in open source, building out proprietary to us what was necessary and important to our business and to make this work, and then building out the proof of concept. And of course, as soon as you put a piece of technology up and out there, you want to constantly improve and work on the next version, of course, but it is important to get it out there, not perfect the UI, UX, don't perfect all the pieces and parts. Things are going to break. It happens to the biggest and best in the world, but to get it out there and start proving. And that's really what Techstars was amazing at kind of helping us do, is get it out there, prove your concept, and now let's grow and scale.
were you in New York for Techstars?
We did their virtual anywhere program. It was amazing because you got to be in your home base, and I'm a mom of a 3-year-old. I didn't want to pick up and move for months at a time. It would have been a challenge, but being able to be in my home base, virtually connect with my class, and then every few weeks we traveled to a different Techstars location. So we got to be in Boulder, in San Fran, in LA. So we got all those networks in one experience. It was unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're mostly bootstrapped?
We are mostly bootstrapped. Of course, we took the Techstars pre-seed money.
Which is like 100,000?
120K.
120.
And then, that carried us all the way. And then in the fall, another thing as a startup, obviously as a bootstrap startup, look for any and every contest you can apply to. Don't think that you don't fit the criteria or you're too early. Apply to them all, because I tell you, it has propelled our business incredibly.
Have you gotten like non-dilutive grant funding through that?
You get incredible honors and awards and incredible press and coverage. We just won the We Work Creator Awards presented by Ashton Kutcher, and We Work invested in us, and it just kind of launched and supercharged everything. So it's worth checking out.
Are you guys planning to do any kind of significant fundraise, or what's your fundraising look like going out a couple of years?
Well, the lawyer and planner and me, go as long as you can without fundraising, obviously. It's powerful. I think the challenging thing is that the world has shifted. People are trying to do things fast. There's a lot of things that cost a lot, and you want to do it quickly, and technology is expensive. And so don't get me wrong, there are businesses or comes a time in your business when you absolutely need money. But I would say don't just do it because it's there and available, especially early on. I know friends who raised massive seed money on an idea, and they blew through it all and the company's done. So it does help to have a proof of concept. And honestly, bootstrapping, although there are massive challenges, I learned so much about my customer when it's me emailing every customer within a few minutes every day. I get to know and talk to them instead of hiring a business development and sales team. And when it comes to the technology, I could have spent a fortune and built all these tech systems, but I wouldn't have realized that our big challenge was automating this onboarding process. And that's what we need to spend our money on, not building a marketplace, but these are the areas which are powerful for our business. And so I think that's where so of course, now we've hit a point we're growing and scaling, and we are going to do
You found like product market fit.
Yes.
And so what are your next challenges? Are you trying to build a team?
Yes.
Is that what you would raise funds for, is to hire some new key hires?
Absolutely. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not a business if we don't have customers. But as we're seeing now, our traction grow, our numbers grow, our customers grow, our buyer and seller base grow. We do need support to continue to manage and nurture that base, as well as to continue to grow that. So part of our funds will, of course, go to business development and sales support. That being said, we haven't spent a penny yet in PR, marketing, advertising, or customer acquisition. A lot of people do, and there's some businesses where, of course, it's really important, but I have found that strategic partnerships with those businesses are way more valuable than throwing money into Facebook ads before you know exactly who you're targeting and what ad to put out there. But some of these kind of key strategic partnerships with networks and your community can be even more valuable than paying for all these bought lists or customer acquisition. So yes, to grow that team, and then obviously from the technology point, we do hit a point too now where we're integrating blockchain, we're working with machine learning, and as we have bigger and bigger enterprise customers, we do need people to manage those more day to day. But now it's obvious and we know.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm grilling you on your finances there.
No, come on.
So, there's a lot of challenges in kind of building the business, but there's also personal challenges. You mentioned you have a 3-year-old.
Yes.
So like the day to day, what do you have, like habits or different like daily routines, or how do you manage that side of like your life?
I have to say, for me, I always knew I wanted to be a working mom, that it was important to make me happy, and if I'm happy, my family's going to be happy, right? It's inevitable. That being said, of course, my 3-year-old is the love of my life. Jacob is my everything. And so, it is hard to say goodbye in the morning, and but I make it a point. So we've set up in his room his own office. So when mommy goes to office before school, Jacob can sit at his desk in his own office and build his own company to go change the world. And he feels connected kind of that way, which is important, that why mommy and daddy work and what he can do to contribute. And then I do make a point, unless, sometimes obviously I'm here now, I can't be with him, but make a point to try to come home every night for dinner. We spend our quality time. And, it's funny, even though you have as a mother less hours in the day, you're so much more efficient about the hours you do have. I could have wasted all this time and resources on all this nonsense that I used to, but now, because my time is limited, I have to do what's going to make the most impact for my business, and in some ways, that just makes you kind of hyper more effective and efficient and streamlined in what you do. And then for me too, at the end of the day when I get home, and if I have a stressful day, that smile, it's what kind of brightens your world. And we do track in our platform the water and the toxins that we're saving by diverting this stuff from landfill. And even as an early stage startup, we've already saved over 1 billion gallons of water. And so thinking about that and that number, that we can make a difference, and that I am building a future for my son and for his children in the future, that's what keeps you going.
Yeah, I've read that textiles are like the 2nd largest polluter in the world.
Massive. It is a crazy statistic. For those who don't know, one t-shirt takes 700 gallons of water to produce and another 700 gallons of water to wash it in its lifetime. That's one shirt. And 2 billion are sold every year around the world. So it also contributes to the #1 polluter, oil and agriculture, since we use a portion of that in our materials. So I see that obviously there's potential opportunity in that too, because it's a massively powerful industry that connects and employs people all over the world. And so in all that negativity, there are opportunities and business models to innovate, do it better, and to really make an impactful difference.
Do you look at it as like a branding, and like a personal values kind of thing? Or is there also a way that you can monetize the carbon reduction, the water saved, that kind of thing?
There are a lot of new business models and new innovative technologies that are doing just that.
Yeah.
So, and there's incredible data out there right now too about the impact that your business can have. But funny enough, when we present our solution to enterprise, at the end of the day, to me, it's very important that this is a sustainable solution. But for them, if we can present this as how this is going to improve their bottom line, how their profit and ROI is going to grow by doing this, and by the way, it also has a sustainable benefit, it's kind of a win-win-win, and it's hard for them to say no. But I think a lot of times businesses are in sustainability forget about the for-profit side, and especially for businesses like mine that are very much for-profit, but with a social mission, it has to be a model that works that way. Now, we have a non-for-profit arm, and we do pledge a portion of our proceeds. My core business is for-profit, and I can do a hell of a lot more with the money. So for us, that was very important.
Yeah, well, it's so nice because there's an obvious environmental argument for what you're doing, but you're also bringing a ton of value to your customers.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's great. So, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk with you. We are videotaping this, and this will go out into the whole Startup Grind network. So I want to give you a chance to just kind of put some words of wisdom or a plug for something new out into the collective Startup Grind consciousness before we wrap up.
Yeah, I think, when I talk to my kind of younger self or to my boy about things, the biggest thing I would say is whatever you're building and whatever you're doing, Don't stop and don't be afraid. Don't think, like for me, that I didn't have any technical background and couldn't code a line of code, that I can't go build a business to change a world that's in blockchain and machine learning and doing all this cool tech stuff, and now I can code. Don't be afraid. Don't perfect the product. Put it out there, get the idea out there, start testing it, iterating it, grow, learn, improve. At the end of the day, that's really how you're going to win and be the last person standing. The other thing I would say that I learned a lot, and this did not come as naturally to me, is ask everyone you know and everyone you don't know for help. Right? Like for me, I was so inclined, I call myself the queen of raw. I got this, we're gonna go take this to the moon, and here we go. But building a business, it takes a village, right? Just like raising a family. And you need support out there, and a network, and a team, and don't be afraid to ask people, but in the interest of giving first, which I know is core here, I always go out with someone with an offer as well as an ask, and but be very pointed about it, and it's led to some great relationships.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we've got a little time that we can open it up for audience Q&A.
Yes.
So what's the vision, 5-10-year vision for Queen of Raw?
Good question. On the one hand, I always tell myself, be hyper-focused, build this into the machine right now that you know it can be, and then allow it to kind of iterate and grow. At the same time, of course, for every business and a team and every investor, you need to have the long-term vision. So we started this as kind of a software-enabled marketplace and in the fashion industry. But we've already had conversations and interest from other industries asking us, what would this business model look like in automotive and aviation, in computer and electronics? So we're starting to very methodically think in the future about what that looks like. Of course, today we have to be hyper-focused and command the first industry, but it's something we're looking at in the future. And then I'm the first person as a lawyer who will say it depends. We could be a great acquisition target for someone like an Alibaba or an Amazon, or, let's keep going and let's IPO this baby. So open to see where it goes, but you're right, you have to start thinking about kind of the growth plan and where you're going. Yep.
How much of your business is involved with logistics in supply chain analysis? And you mentioned early you found that the asymmetry of the demand and supply was a challenge, but interesting and probably informational. I would assume that could help you build a marketplace that could geolocate and maybe reduce transit time between these demand, supply, and matchups?
That's a brilliant question. That's exactly what we're thinking. My dream is, I'm sorry to our shipping partners, UPS, FedEx, and DHL, my dream is we never need to ship anything anywhere in the world ever again. Because you know what? We've got it in dead stock from raw materials to finished goods all around us. So we have built into our platform, you can geolocate inventory around you. Obviously, especially as we're continuing to onboard inventory, there's still going to be people who want something specific and want to ship it. We do use green shipping partners to try to offset that. But you're right, at the end of the day, that we very much are a logistics business. And for right now, we do automate the entire shipping logistics process. We had to make it quick and easy to make a buy-sell match, but then also automate that so our sellers aren't doing the work. We can't expect.
With the ML that you mentioned that you were using as well, you could start to create a predictive analysis of where demand is going to occur for different materials.
Absolutely, without a doubt, 100%, and that's what we continue to try to locate. And of course, we know at the end of the day, there's inventory all over the world. But a lot of this inventory, at least in textiles, sits in certain parts of the world that we know. And so what are the opportunities within those regions, and also how do we offset some of that negative impact? No, but I appreciate those thoughts.
It's a way to not only offset carbon footprint, but help reinvigorate local businesses with information about demand.
Yep, no, appreciate that, for sure. Yep.
Off that, what was the largest amount of waste you have experienced or witnessed?
It's crazy. I mean, like I said, some people come to us and are like, oh, you're in the scrap, schmata business. And they think it's a little offcuts. Yeah. And I tell, and I laugh because it all depends on how you define a scrap. Because some of my scraps are 50,000 yards in mint condition up of one single SKU. And we have obviously a huge amount of SKUs. So there is a large volume in perfect perfect condition of stuff. So for some of our stuff, sure. I mean, we sell smaller volume stuff too, especially on our kind of freemium queenofraw.com, which is mostly targeted to smaller and medium-sized buyers, smaller volume stuff. But we have stuff hundreds of thousands to tens of thousands of yards up. So volume exists. Yeah.
Do you have a time parameter for how long the stocks usually should last?
Yep.
Because everybody thinks obsolete is evil, so they're trying to get off their books, right? So how do you race to that game to find matching buyers?
Yep, no, it's a good question. So for every seller on our platform, we work with them both on pricing and we work on strategies and on time strategies. So we do fire sales. We can drop the price to try to move it quicker if they want a higher price, but they're willing to wait a little longer. It's all part of the data that we're collecting, and we can help educate them around the best practices and best strategies. Funny thing is, a lot of this stuff has been sitting in their warehouse for quite some time, and until working with us, they didn't even know they had it. And in fact, some of the major brands and retailers, who I won't mention on air, but they thought they had a certain amount of liability on the books, and in working with us, they realized they had more than 10x in liability in that. So a lot of times they don't even know, and so once they wake up to it, of course they want it gone yesterday, and we're trying to move it as quickly as possible, but we usually have a little bit longer of a cushion than you'd think.
Do you put a timestamp on those fabric, like a FIFO system, or?
We have a timestamp in our back end, and we let prospective buyers who are searching know about it, but we are thinking about and looking at in the future ways to kind of time map for the buyer to know that and to search based on timing and play a bit with pricing and bid-ask models. So it's all something we're thinking about, for sure. Yeah.
If nobody else. So how do you run in front of competitors? Two extremes. One could be Alibaba likes your idea and say, hey, I'm going to take care of China, right? It's a huge market there. I'm going to make matchmaking for the factories and apparel factories and textile factories. To another extreme, individual dealers. And if they know Lululemon is always going to buy that 97.3 poly spandex fabric, and they go to find the factory and sell directly to those customers. So how do you try to get it in front of, or always stay in front of them?
Yeah, so I mean, our proprietary technology that we've built has become kind of our economic moat. We're not just a marketplace and selling this, right? We give them the data and analytics, all of the tools that are helping them both identify waste now and sell it, but minimize it going forward. So by having these additional tools, once they're on, so far we've seen less than a 1% churn, and that's just because that one company went under. They get hooked and they love it. But to your point, could they go out and circumvent the system and go do it? Well, sure. But at the end of the day, in the numbers that we're seeing of waste around the world, there's enough other waste for me to worry about and sell. If that one customer wants to go to Lululemon and do that, that's fine. There's enough that we can work with in what we're dealing with. And at the end of the day, some people also ask, well, aren't you writing yourself out of a business because if you're selling all this waste and you're preventing waste, then there's not going to be any more waste for you to sell. And I said, you know what? That's the holy grail. That's the dream that I've solved the world's water crisis. There's no more waste and everyone's on my software solution, so I got no problem. Don't worry about it. Like, so that's how we're thinking about it.
I have one more question.
Yeah, of course.
So, what's the current challenge right now you're dealing with?
So we were supply constrained, and we've solved for that. Of course, typical marketplace, buy and sell and buy and sell. So now we're building up the buyer side to match the new inventory that we're onboarding quickly. So, you know, as any startup, there's always going to be a challenge, but it's kind of how you think about solving it, how you test solving it. And that's where we've actually found some incredible strategic partnerships that I can't announce yet, but we'll be able to announce soon. That's bringing a huge volume of even more buyers than our base already to solve for that. So it's going to be constantly solving kind of challenges, but that's the fun of it, right? So.
Seymour, I saw you were taking notes. Seymour, did you have any questions for her? I saw you had a whole page of notes.
Use my 2 ears.
Oh.
I hope it's worthwhile.
Oh, you're just listening. Okay. All right. Well, if
I'm just
anybody else,
I will make one statement
yes, sir.
that your flywheel is helping people overcome inertia.
Good. Good. That is why we are here.
That's why we named it.
Gotta get that ball rolling.
Good. So if we don't have any other questions, let's wrap up. Let's get some drinks, some more food, And Stephanie will be here for a little bit longer, so if you have any questions you don't want to ask the whole crowd, please come talk to Stephanie.
Anytime, happy to connect. Thank you so much for having me.
done.
Yeah.